was talking about the other day, and I was standing there thinking, Claudia Black, early in the early '80s, wrote a book called "It'll Never Happen to Me." And if you are an adult child of an alcoholic, if you haven't ever read anything about adult children of alcoholics, I'd recommend reading Claudia's book because she is the one that really, her along with John Bradshaw, really formulated the whole ACOA program. And then I was just thinking about this morning. We spoke together down in San Antonio years ago, and then I brought her here to Abilene for a conference up at Hardin Simmons. I partnered with them. And then Claudia Black became our clinical director. But she didn't come face to face. Every Thursday we would staff clients, and we'd get her on speakerphone. And I'd forgotten about so much of that we were so well connected. And I learned a lot from Claudia. I learned a lot from Claudia about how I lived as a child of an alcoholic. And, and today they've added not only adult children of alcoholics, but children who grow up in any form of dysfunction. And that dysfunction can include, the alcohol doesn't have to be the only issue. If the environment is inappropriate for children and unpredictable. And, anytime that it's unpredictable, like where there's a rager in the family or there's work addiction in the family. I've told you all about the little boy that was up in Seattle and couldn't get off of his computer. He was looking at sexual activity. Anyway, long story short, his father was a work addict and was never at home. So any addiction will do that takes the focus completely off of the children and onto either outside activities or the parent is engaged in some form of addiction, And so what happens is, like in that little boy's case, what happens is the emotions of a child gets to be, they feel unsafe, and they can grow up. We have treated so many people that come here and they'll use this phrase, well, I don't feel safe. Well, the house is not on fire, the building's not on fire, there is, there's not a bear chasing you. But when I hear that phrase, I don't feel safe, 99% of the time you can mark it down that they are adult children of alcoholics because they haven't learned how to create their own safety. They grew up in households, like I said, where it was unpredictable. And alcohol doesn't have to always be present. It does we've learned that any dysfunction will do. But the movement actually started with adult children of alcoholics. And so there is roles that children take on. It's almost like when you're raised in an alcoholic home, it's almost like these roles are assigned to you. Or the children get together and say, okay, I'll be the hero, you be the scapegoat, you be the lost child, and you be the little mascot. And that's how children survive in dysfunctional households, particularly where there is the alcoholism. Because children take over when they're raised in a lot of dysfunction. Children a lot of times take over the duties of parents like I did. I mean, I became my mother's mother. And there's such a drawback to all of that because children who are raised in alcoholic homes start doing things that's not age appropriate. I mean, they'll start like I paid bills at an early age. I drove at age 10. I would drive down to the liquor store and pick up mother's booze from the window. And that man knew that I wasn't old enough to drive. I hope in today's time people are pay more attention to children. I don't know. But anyway, you do get to do things that's not age appropriate. But the kickback with being an adult child of an alcoholic, you really never know if you're doing it right or not. You just do it, and you don't you just don't know that if you're doing it right. And I'm just thinking back to so many scenarios that I lived in my own life. And one of the things is if love is shown in the family of where there's abuse or neglect or abandonment or alcoholism or any addiction, there's if love is shown, it's usually inconsistent. It's not on a consistent basis, or it's conditional. I'll love you or if you'll do this for me. So it's and it's really a lot of secrecy in homes, where there's dysfunction, and a lot of secrecy. And I know my dad would tell me, "Don't you go to school and tell anyone what happens in this house stays in this house. You don't go anywhere and tell anything." One thing, I was so totally embarrassed to tell anything, and another thing, I was so totally shut down that I couldn't hardly say my own name, let alone tell secrets. So there's a lot of secrets in alcoholic homes, dysfunctional homes, and children are not supposed to tell the secrets. And then people come here, and what we say is, you're as sick as you are secret. And so that's when we help people get to those core secrets that they're carrying around. And it usually starts in childhood. So what this boils down to is that one or both parents are addicted to something, like with our children. And I was so blinded, in that I was going to do everything opposite that my parents did. And I did. To look outside of our house, we were pretty much a model family in Wiley. We had this cute 2-story house that had ruffled curtains on the windows, an American flag out front, and the appropriate weather. There was red geraniums on the porch. You talk about all-American. We had an all-American looking home. And I did my absolute best to do things different in my home. And we did a lot of things different than the way I was raised. I was a stay-at-home mom. I was there. I cooked the 3 meals. Anyway, we did a lot of things different. But if the adult child doesn't have their own healing, they are going to pass the sickness on to the children. There's no other way you can do it. What I passed on to my children is I was a rager. We pick up our parents' unresolved feelings. My father was a rager. I became a rager. I am not proud of that. It has its own set of symptoms also. And I'll tell you, by the grace of God, I have not raged. My grandson is 23, so he'll be 24 in May, and his mother was pregnant with him when I had my last rage attack. And I'll tell you what, I saw myself in living color. And I've told y'all the story, is that I would just finish that conference center, and there was a pile of rocks out there. And anyway, the director didn't get them cleaned up in a timely manner. I kept asking him to get them done, and 3 days later he still hadn't. And I threw a fit of all fits. and I was doing a family week. I did it in front of everyone. I did it in front of the clients, the staff, the family members. I went home and I put on my work clothes and I went and proceeded to shovel all those rocks up. I'm not proud of that, but I will tell you, God spoke to me. It was almost like a flash of lightning, in that I came to my senses. And the sad part of that is how my children lived. They lived with a crazy woman. Now, at times, I looked very sane. When we'd sit in that third pew on the left-hand side of Wiley Baptist Church, we were a looking good family. They all looked good, the kids did. I was all so overweight, I wasn't looking too good. But they couldn't see the journey before we got there, what it would take for me to get all those kiddos ready, and the hollering and screaming, and I'm not proud of that. And so, yes, my children grew up in dysfunction. Now I hid their dad's alcoholism. My two daughters, oldest daughters, Karen and Kim, we were talking about this just the other day, and I do cuss a little today. I don't know, not a whole lot. Misty thinks I do. I'm teaching her how to cuss, and she's a willing student. No, she's not. I'm teasing her. She's not. And I do not cuss a lot. But anyway, the daughters were talking. They said if they grew up, they never heard one cuss word at our house. I don't know how I could rage without cussing, but I was very particular about cursing, and I just didn't allow it for anyone. And then they said they could never remember a drop of alcohol being in our home. Well, no, because I hid it. I hid their dad's drinking. I hid the alcohol. I hid it all. And then I'd take the blunt of his dysfunction. So, yes, my children grew up in dysfunction. Yes, they grew up in an alcoholic home, but not only was their father an alcoholic, their mother was a compulsive overeater, and I was a mean compulsive overeater. So I would have to feed myself so I could calm myself down. So love is inconsistent in adult children of alcoholics, or they are conditional. There's a lot of secrecy, denial, chaos. And so I want to go over these character defects. And these are specific with adult children of alcoholics or children who are raised in other forms of dysfunction. But they were really designed, this is where Claudia Black, and there was others in the field that came up with, there's a lady, her first name's Janet, I can't remember her last name, but anyway, they're pioneers in the ACOA field. So these are traits, common ACOA traits. They're not necessarily character defects, they could turn out to be, but they're really traits of adult children of alcoholics. So hypervigilance, always on the alert. A child that is raised in alcoholism, you're just always on the alert. When's the next shoe going to drop? And then we take that into our adult life, always thinking, what bad thing is going to happen next. Then another one is people pleasing. Children who grow up in adult homes as adult children of alcoholics, we do a lot in the homes. And then a lot of times the parents will praise us for it, or they'll kind of put us up on a pedestal. And so there's a payoff to that. And so in our adult life, we become people pleasers and approval seeking. We want everyone's approval. Thank God I don't have to have that today. Thank you, God. Another thing is difficulty identifying or trusting feelings. I didn't know what a feeling was. It was two. It was pain and rage. It was the only two feelings that I usually, there might be a little happiness in there somewhere, but as we grow up, if without help, we do have a hard time identifying what we're feeling. And then some children who grew up in dysfunctional homes have that fear of abandonment. I mean, I had such a fear that my mother was going to die. And because she told me she was going to almost on a daily basis, stay home, don't go to school, because I might die while you're gone. That is so abusive to put that on a child. But anyway, fear of abandonment. And that's why we take hostages a lot of times in our adult life. Once we find someone, we just take them hostage and we will never let them go because we have that fear of abandonment. And then we become those who will abandon others for fear that we're going to be abandoned. And then another one is control issues. This is a biggie because as we grow up, then they added, we got to looking at the term codependency. Adult children of alcoholics grow up to be, many of us, such controllers. And so we have control issues and perfectionism. Perfectionism is the highest form of self-abuse. Think of that, about that, perfectionism. Because when you're a perfectionist, you never get it right. You never get it completely right. And so, in my case, I was telling Misty yesterday, she was having me make up a bed, and I was telling Misty, my mother always said, if she wanted something done real fast in the house, she'd get my sister to do it because she was as fast as greased lightning. But if she wanted something done really good, she'd get me to do it because I was a perfectionist. And if I started cleaning one thing, I'd clean everything, Another thing is adult children of alcoholics, these are traits, have trouble with intimacy and our boundaries. Adult children of alcoholics don't know where, when we're in the disease, we don't know where we stop and someone else starts. It's just blended together. We do not know how to set healthy boundaries. And then, and my friend, Annie Lamont, her husband, Neil, writes about this next one. It's called the harsh inner critic. He's done a lot of research and a lot of work on the inner critic. If you ought to read some of his writings. It's very good because he's done an in-depth study on the inner critic. And adult children of alcoholics have that inner critic, where we beat ourselves up unmercifully. We're harsh. We are, if we treated in the disease, if we treated other people like we treat ourselves, we would be arrested for, for abuse or something. So, and this is a big one. This next one is feeling different, unseen, or unworthy. I never felt like I belonged anywhere until I found treatment. And once I found recovery, I do belong. It's up to me to make that decision. But for all my life, I always felt different. And if they only knew, if these people, good people, only knew, what was going on in our house, that they wouldn't like me. I didn't think they did anyway. But we hide so many things, keep so many secrets, but it's that feeling different or unseen or unworthy. And then a lot of children of alcoholics can be very smart. Research has shown adult children of alcoholics have a higher IQ than the average Joe. They really do. But we never know it until we get in recovery. We doubt ourselves. We doubt our intellect. We doubt whether we know how to do something because we feel so unworthy. And children need to be affirmed, and not put up on a pedestal. That's a form of abuse in itself. But they need to be told, and they need to be complimented. They need to be affirmed. And adult children of alcoholics hear very little of that, really, in childhood. And then this one was me confusing chaos with love. I mean, if there wasn't something going on, I'd stir it up. I mean, it's like if you loved me, you'd play this chaotic game with me, stir something up, because that's what love was. And then, a big one here, this last one, is taking responsibility for others' emotions. My Lord, I managed my mother's emotions because I could tell. I mean, you can tell. I could get the look, or I could, hear when my dad would come home. I mean, so I took that on, and it was like my responsibility to get the atmosphere of the house changed immediately, so it wouldn't be so chaotic. And kids, that's not their responsibility. It's not their responsibility. And so you grow up feeling that you can't ever get it right, anything right, because you don't get your parents fixed. You're trying as best you can, but you don't get those suckers fixed, because that's not your place, and they are sick people needing to get well. They're not necessarily bad. They do some bad things, but they're not necessarily bad, needing to get good. They're sick, needing to get well. And this talk is really not about parents or beating them up, because I lived in dysfunction, and then, I was not going to do this, but I created dysfunction. And my husband always say, bless my heart, that's the Al-Anon salute, bless my heart. But I took on so much of the blame of the dysfunction in our household. They had two parents, and they had two ragers. It wasn't just me, but I've always just taken it, bless my heart, taking it all in. But anyway, so here's a laundry list, a simplified laundry list that ACOAs have. And we have to guess at what normal is. We do not know what normal is. This is when, and I still am, I am a people watcher. I love to watch people. And I'm interested in how they live. I think that's what makes me a good therapist, is I'm interested in how they live and what they do and what goes on in that home. But I started that as a child. Because we don't know what normal is, so we keep looking outside ourselves. What is normal? Normal to us is chaos. So another one is adult children of alcoholics have trouble following things through. Any of y'all procrastinators? I was a great starter, but I'd start lots of things, and then this is where my work addiction really came in play. I would start things, but I'd start a lot of different projects at one time. And then that work addiction would kick in, and I would stay up many, many nights to finish the project. So, yes, I would be a procrastinator. I'd put things off, because a lot of times the reason adult children put things off in their adult life is that they really have not been taught basic things, how to do some basic things. We have to make it up. And depending on the severity of the addiction or the abuse or neglect that you experienced in your home, if you did, and that varies. Like for me, and I thank God for her. I thank God for a lot of angels He put in my life that taught me in my childhood. How to do some basic things. So I would watch people. I'd watch them. And I had a sister-in-law. I have a half brother that was my father's first wife, and they were very wealthy people. And she was a beautiful, beautiful, full-blood Indian from Oklahoma, and she did get some of that Indian money. But anyway, she was a gorgeous woman. And they had a little boy that was about a year younger than me. So she wanted me to go with her a lot of times to take him places. And oh God, I felt so uncomfortable because I was fat and she was pretty and all. Anyway, but what I did, I learned a lot from her, from Jenny, because one of the things I would watch, I did not know how to use silverware. How, to use. So, and she'd take me to nice restaurants. Well, and there'd be more than a fork there. And I wouldn't know what do you do with all of that? So I'd watch Jeannie. And I know today she knew that I was watching her. I want to give you a little story about that. As good as they looked, her husband, my half brother, became as sick as my sister and I did, and he got very sick. They divorced, all of that, and she lost, anyway, I won't say that. I don't want their kids to watch this, but anyway, she lost all of her money, Fast forward years later, we were living in town, had built a new house in town before. I already had shades, but we wasn't living out here then. And this car drove up in my driveway one afternoon, and this chubby, dark-skinned woman with this beautiful black grayish hair got out, and I didn't recognize her. And she came in, rang my doorbell. Well, that was Jeannie, this woman that I so admired, that was a wealthy woman when I was growing up. She had lost everything, and everything she owned was in her car, everything. So, long story short, I put her in treatment at Shades. I didn't know her. I knew I could treat her. She was very overweight. I put her in treatment at Shades. And then she stayed and she worked for us for about 3 or 4 years. And we often talked about that. And she told me from her point of view of what it was like to be around me as a child. And she said, I'm about to cry, she said, Tennie, I always knew you were going to grow up and do some great things, do something. I knew you were going to from the time you were a little girl, because you were always wanting to learn from me. And isn't that something that then she lived out here at Shades and was like a house parent, and she cooked, and she was a great cook. So anyway, be nice to those people, because you never know when they're going to grow up and come back, and y'all are going to wind up being good friends. So anyway, we judge ourselves unmercifully. We are attracted to emotionally unavailable people. This is your love addict. And a lot of love addicts grew up in in dysfunctional alcoholic homes, because they are attracted to people that can't be there for them, because we're raised where people can't be. Abnormal becomes normal. You go after what you know. And so you keep picking people that can't be there for you. Like, we've had women that marry gay men because they just know they can change them. They just know they can change them. And the gay men marry a straight woman so they can look good in the community. That's no great big secret. That happens. At any given town, like Abilene, for instance, every Thursday, if everyone that was gay wore purple on Thursday, you'd see a purple haze all over the town. There are more gay people that are married. I won't go into all of that, but they do that for a cover-up. And so a lot of people are attracted to unavailable people, and that is because we didn't get love in childhood, and we love the challenge. We love to try to find somebody that we can make love us. That is so sick. But anyway, that's one thing I didn't do. I didn't marry a gay man, but if it'd been nice to, if I'd found one, I probably would have. Who knows? But anyway, We become addicted to excitement or drama. Become addicted. When you live in dysfunction, I mean, you get addicted to it. And it's like abnormal becomes normal. And, as much as I tried to make our home, and it was different than what I grew up in, but still there was dysfunction there. It just looked different than what I grew up in, you know. And I didn't want any drama. I didn't, and so what I did is I created drama. Anyway, so another thing is ACOAs feel guilt when standing up for themselves. Y'all ever feel guilty if you are an adult child of an alcoholic? To take a stand for themselves, it's hard. And then another one is they mistake pity for love. I loved and adored my mother, but I felt sorry for my mother, and I pitied her. And so I thought if you found somebody that kind of felt sorry for you, they really loved you. They don't, but anyway. So, an adult child of an alcoholic, they're loyal even when it hurts. We just keep hanging in there. We'll hang in till hell freezes over. So, like I said, those roles that are played out, it's almost like the kids get together and say, okay, I'll be this one, you be that one. And I have 4 children, and each one of them played a distinct role, these roles. And usually the firstborn is the hero child. It wasn't so much in our family, it was the second. Our first child, my son, he became our little mascot. He became cute, precious, and darling, and we all just overloved him. His sisters did when they came along, and we all just held him up in high regard. But his sister, the one next to him, Karen, became the hero child. Well, all of our children have made us look good, but Karen really made us look good. She was Miss this, Miss that. She was good in school, made straight A's. She was, 4-H Gold Star girl at age 13, which is unheard of. They're usually 17, 18. They're usually seniors. She excelled in anything that she did, anything. And I know today, and we've talked about it, and we've sat in, therapy together. A lot of it was to please her mother. A lot of it was to make, to get my attention. And so that's a lot what the hero does. They're a high achiever, they're over responsible, and they have invisible needs. They act like they have no needs because you got a perfect kid there and you sort of overlook them. And you got another perfect one coming up. So the next one then, also that hero child can become the caretaker. And they try to fix for, the family, and they lose themselves in that process. And then this next child that comes along does not want to be like Goody Two-Shoes, They look at the hero child and they think, oh, I don't want to be like her. And they become the scapegoat. And we had a little scapegoat. Kim was our scapegoat. And what they do, they act out the pain of the family. The scapegoat acts out the family pain. And Kim did that. And she knows it, and we've talked about it, but Kim was, out of one thing into 15. She got me on first name basis with every teacher, every principal, all the way up to high school. But I want to tell you, Kim's not the scapegoat today. All of my children are in good recovery. My son has never chose the recovery path, but he has become a very successful man, and we just kind of leave him alone about the recovery. He does, he did finally admitted that his dad was an alcoholic. It took him a long time, to admit that his dad was an alcoholic, what he would say is, well, my mother says my dad is an alcoholic. I don't think so. I just think I have a crazy mother. And that's pretty much it. He drank and I went nuts. So, all right, so the scapegoat is acting, their job is to act out the pain of the family. And then there is the little lost child that comes along. And they start disappearing emotionally, and sometimes they will bodily disappear. Like this will be the kid that will go stay in the room playing games or playing with dolls. This is the kid that will like animals and they'll want the animal in their room. Now this is, if you really want to know what's going on in a house, ask the lost child. The lost child is usually, all of these kids are usually very intelligent. They are as smart and sometimes smarter than the hero child as far as grades and all of that. But they don't show it. They do not let anyone know it. They keep that hid because they do not want to draw any attention to themselves. And they can just keep disappearing emotionally. But if you want to know what's going on in a household, ask the lost child, because they observe everything. And then this last one is the little mascot, and this is the one that turns humor, uses humor to survive. They are the ones that will get you to laughing about what's happening. And really, my son played that mascot role a lot, in that he, was cute, precious, and darling, and he could get people to laughing and all. So, why do you have to even look at the symptoms of being an adult child of an alcoholic? Why do you even have to think about it? The reason you have to think about it is because it's going to show up in your relationships. It's going to show up into your own parenting. And what you have to look at is if you haven't worked on being an ACOA, looked at those issues, those fundamental traits, or they're not character defects, they're just traits of how children are who grow up in alcoholic homes. Because what it does, it will show up in relationships, in your relationships. And how it usually shows up is, through the control, through codependency. It shows up in marriage. It shows up in our parenting. I've already shared with you a lot about parenting. It'll show up at work. You can see when you have an adult child of an alcoholic, if you're aware of the symptoms, you can see when you have one in the workplace, because they start out and they want to impress you, and they will do everything. They will take over even other people's jobs sometimes. They will just do and do. They become human doers. And then they sort of catch themselves and they get to resenting it. And then it's all the boss's fault, or it's all somebody else's fault. Because what they've done is they've created their childhood. If they had to do a lot in childhood and, where they got praise for it or not, they were looking for praise. And that's what workers do. When you have an adult child of an alcoholic that's untreated on your staff, they show up and, at first, it's just wonderful because they want to do everything and they pick up everybody else's load and, and they can be too cheerful and all that. And then all of a sudden they don't feel that they're appreciated enough. You back on these traits, they don't feel appreciated enough. And then they will, blow up or quit, or they will tell things about another employee. I mean, it's hard to have an adult child of an alcoholic on staff that's not in recovery. Also shows up in churches. A good ACOA will go to church to get good, and they will want to take over. They'll want to be involved in everything, and they get involved in this and that and something else, and then they get a grudge going because they have to do everything, you know. And then it shows up in friendships. Being a friend of an adult child of an alcoholic, you never know what you're dealing with. I mean, if they're not in recovery, these traits, these symptoms will pop up, and you'll think, "Ooh, gosh, where did that come from?" And a lot of times it'll be directed at you, and this is in friendships. And a lot of ACOAs will find people to be friends with that will remind them of their sickest parent. Not the healthiest, the sickest. Think of it, the sickest parent. They also will find the sickest mate sometimes, so they can fix them. You know, when my husband and I were dating, it didn't bother me that he didn't look too good. He'd wear his pants too short with white socks, and he wouldn't tuck his shirt tail in. And I thought, we would just go to a drive-in. We wouldn't go to an inside restaurant. I'd keep him where people wouldn't see him a whole lot, because I knew the minute we got married, I was going to change him. I mean, and I threw all those clothes away. I bought him new ones. I fixed him up, and that's what we do as adult children of alcoholics. We make them look good to make us look good. So leadership, adult children of alcoholics invariably will wind up in leadership all the time, saying, "No, I don't want to do that. No, I don't," But deep down, we love the honor. We love the honor, but we don't want to do the work. And so it can, or when you're in leadership, I was thinking about PTA, PTO. I never did want to be president. I just always managed to be on the nominating committee so I could choose the president. You talk about control. I did not think Wiley's school could function when my kids got out of school. I mean, what are they going to do? I mean, I guess I can volunteer up there and continue to run things. Anyway, so what shows up in your adult life, what will show up is when you get in recovery. When you get in recovery from being an ACOA, people won't like it. They will not like it. Because we quit doing everything for everyone. I know, and ACOA symptoms and traits dovetails with codependency. It's just so, in there together. Not everyone that's codependent were raised in adult children, and is in alcoholic homes, but a lot of them came from some form of dysfunction. So, what to do about it? What do we do about it? Is first thing, we have to be aware. Awareness is a gift from God. Awareness. An alcoholic will never get sober until they're aware that they have a problem. A codependent will never get into recovery if they're not aware of it. An ACOA will never get in recovery unless they are aware of what they're doing, because abnormal becomes normal. You think that that's normal and everybody else is strange and not doing, So awareness, you must be aware of being an adult child of an alcoholic. And this is one of the reasons that I was always a seeker. I knew that there had to be some answers somewhere. And then, as shy as I was, I put myself out there. And then I was thinking, like I said this morning, about meeting Claudia Black, and then inviting her here to Abilene, and then her becoming our clinical director, although it wasn't face-to-face, it was by phone, but still, she taught me a lot. And so I would manage to, when I would find, this is why I guess I get a little short with people who don't put the work in to get in recovery, because it takes work. It takes a lot of work. And I am throwing bouquets at myself, but if I heard of a workshop anywhere, or if I heard of a speaker anywhere, I would find out where it was going to be and I would go. John Bradshaw had just come out with a book, and I heard that he was speaking in Dallas. Well, I drug my whole family. No, it was Kim, Christy, and my husband R.L., and then our dear friend Pat. We all went to his workshop. And then later, he invited me down to Houston. John Bradshaw had I don't know if y'all are familiar with him, he was certainly a pioneer in the field. But he knew nothing about eating disorders. And so he invited me down to he had an outpatient program in Houston. And I would go down there and teach his staff about eating disorders. So put yourself out there. If you want recovery, show up. Suit up, show up, get out there. And listen to different people, because you're going to get different ideas from different people. Go to workshops, go to, get you some good information. And then go to ACOA meetings. They've got great ones online. We used to have them here in Abilene, or not here in Buffalo Gap, but in Abilene. And I would love to start another one back, but I'm not going to, because I'm too old. I'm not too old. I don't want to. I do not want to start another meeting. But I would go to one in a heartbeat if someone else would start it. So if you are an adult child of an alcoholic, get with recovering ACOAs, because they speak a different language. And, get online and find ACOA meetings. And you'll find your tribe. If you have been raised in any form of dysfunction or alcoholism, you will find your tribe at ACOA meetings. When I walked into my first ACOA meeting, I've been in Al-Anon for years, but ACOA speaks a different language. And I understood once I got there, because when I was in Al-Anon, as in those early days, I went primarily, now I had a husband that was drinking, but I went to Al-Anon primarily because of my mother. And so I would try to talk about my drunk mother and about what I had to do as a kid and all. They were offended. They did not want to hear about my childhood. And later on, a sponsor that I had in ACOA said, Tennie, the reason they didn't want to hear about it is because they were doing some of those same things to their own children. Al-Anons could be mean bees. They can be mean heifers, really. Untreated Al-Anon can be the meanest thing in the world. So when I would talk about my childhood, it would bring up what they were doing in their own homes. To their own children. So, all right, so how do we recover? One thing, we set boundaries without guilt. You set a boundary and don't get guilty over it, because people are going to push your boundaries. They will not take no for a complete sentence. They don't know it's a complete sentence. They want to push, because if we train people how to treat us, and if you have done everything in your home in your family, you've been the one that did most of everything, they don't want you to give it up. And they'll say, well, you have just become selfish since you've been going to that meeting. People would tell me that, well, you're just not the same person since you started going to those meetings. So set boundaries without guilt. And separate the past from the present. Don't live in the past. Like this morning, I've reflected some on the past, hoping maybe y'all could identify with it. I don't live in that anymore. I live in the present, So that's what we have to do, separate the past from the present. And then we have to reparent ourselves with compassion, to reparent ourselves. Now, in the early ACOA movement, people started carrying around teddy bears. you could tell an ACOA because they had a teddy bear with them, and then they take them to board meetings now, or take them everywhere they went. Now, I'm not like that. I think that is just, I don't know. I was not really for all of that. I did get me a doll, and I did get me a teddy bear, and I did, you know, but as far as taking it out in public, I didn't do that. But if it works for you, take that bear anywhere you want to. But, it does help you to, if you have, Kim is showing me so much about this. Her little precious dog died several months ago, and one of her clients gave her the cutest little white stuffed dog, and I gave her a little one for Christmas. And she just holds those little animals to her. And that's what's good about having like a stuffed toy to hold close to your heart. What that does, it helps to start healing that inner child, that child part of us, And then we also have a teenager that needs to be reparented. And I'm not saying anything. Anyway, if you know my friend Ashley, and if you're on Facebook much, you're going to be seeing Ashley. She's there all over everywhere talking about healing her inner teenager. And she's working a lot about healing that inner teenager because she'd experienced a lot of abuse, and she, worked on the baby and the toddler and then the preschool and then the school. Now she's up to the teenager. So reparent ourselves with compassion, and then replace shame with understanding. Now, this is where we really support people in coming and doing an intensive. If you haven't worked on those inner child, the things that you're carrying around, come do an intensive with us. That's what it's designed for, is to put the past in the past, do the work around it, do the anger work, the grief work, the shame work, and quit carrying the shame around. So ACOA is around awareness before change. Feelings are information, not emergencies. Feelings are information. Did you hear that? Not emergencies. It's not, oh my God, the house is burning down, when it's just a little smoke, Boundaries are loving, not selfish. Progress over perfection. You are not allowed, you are allowed to outgrow survival mode. If you've lived in survival mode all of your life, it's okay to give it up and move past it. And remember, you are not broken. You are adapted. You can adapt to a whole new way of life. And the way that you do it is through good therapy, through a good 12-step program, a sponsor, and have trauma-informed therapy. Don't go and just sit in a therapist's office and talk about your past. Get with someone that has trauma-informed therapy like the intensive does. So anyway, that's what I have about adult children of alcoholics. We've got a few minutes. Who would like to share about being an adult child of an alcoholic?